Here we're machining one of the two cylinder end flanges. Hello, well today's little waffle is about hand tools, their use and their care. Well, perhaps not so much their use, that's a big subject, but certainly their care. And in the metal workshop, the most used tool is the file, and it's the most misunderstood tool as well. I suppose the next most common tool would be the chisel, probably followed by the scraper. Well, I've got lots of files. As you can see, I keep a few in the rack here. It's not really the best system. Files should never be rubbed against one another, that soon destroys the teeth, and this is not particularly ideal, but I do take my care as I take them in and out of the rack. They most certainly shouldn't be put loose in a drawer. I've got literally hundreds of files, mostly from people have given me or they've thrown them out, and this is typical of the state you get. It's rusty, full of dirt. No handle, of course, that's typical. So let's get that bony issue out the way. All files should have a handle, a wooden handle. Hasn't got to be anything clever. You know it makes sense. They only cost a few shillings. You can go to a hardware store and have change out of a fiver if you buy a dozen. So if you're not going to heed that warning, you might as well switch off now, because you're wasting your time, but more important than that, you're wasting mine. So assuming you're still with me, we'll carry on. Well, there's different types of files. There's rectangular, square, triangular, three-sided, taper, double convex. It goes on and on. And the English sizes range from 4 inches up to about 16, I think it is. And then you've got different degrees of coarseness. You've got rough or coarse. You've got bastard or intermediate. You've got second cut. You've got smooth. You've got dead smooth. So it's quite a complex subject. Of all your files, pick out 3 or 4 that cut the best, the newest, and the ones that do the best job, and put them aside for brass and bronzes. Do not use them for steel. I know this might sound for beginners a bit odd, but you want the best cutting files for brasses, and when they get worn out then they can go over to steel. So mark the handles, paint them, drill a hole in them, just so you can see which is which. Okay, assuming that you've got a handle, I will keep on about this. This is a tapered file. That's the point, that's the body. This is the heel, and this is the tag. This is all hardened and tempered, with the exception of the tag. They usually leave those in a softer state. That is for going into a wooden handle, not for opening tins of paint. I'll keep on about this. Whilst on the subject of teeth, we've got single cut, double cut, separate or rasp tooth. The latter being used mainly on synthetic materials. It's a good idea to keep files clean, and the teeth run at an angle diagonally across the file, which, like a milling cutter, represents the feed of the cut. Whatever you do, don't use one of those. Wire brushes and files do not go together. That will kill that one. We do not want wire brushes on files. Got the idea? So how do you clean a file? Well, you use a file card. What's a file card? Well, it's a piece of soft material, usually something like brass, and you impart the teeth of the file, and they're all different, to the brass, and use that to clean out the muck in the teeth. So it's a simple question. Here I've got made one up. It's a piece of copper pipe, put in the vise and flattened, look. Couldn't be simpler. Here I'll put a knob on the end just for convenience of hand use. But you can use a cork, piece of wood, whatever you like. And we lay the file with its handle over the side of the bench, and at the beginning of the heel, which will probably be the least used part of the file. Let's see if I can zoom in. I'll have a go. That way, that way, that way, that way. Whoop, that'll do. We zoom in, and at about 45 degrees with our piece of copper, we work backwards and forwards in the same position, pushing down hard. And what we're doing, or should done, where's my camera gone? What I should have done is, I'm just going to focus. No, it's not. No, sorry about that. But anyway, take my word for it, there's little teeth in the end of that now that we've imparted into this piece of copper. And if we go along the file, working our way up as we go, we're slowly getting all the muck out of the file. And we do that whatever type of file we've got. Let's try a finer one. That one perhaps. Now if you look very closely at this, you'll see little tiny pieces of metal called pinning in the teeth. These greatly reduce the efficiency of the file, but more important than that, they impart a scratch on your work. And it's a devil of a job to get out these scratches, so the best thing is to eliminate them. So taking our tool again, start at the beginning, get the teeth working, move along a bit, keep going, and when we come up to the little pieces, I don't know if it's going to show on camera, but keep it in shot it might. It should show you taking those pieces out, and all that pinning is coming out of the file. I don't know how well this is coming across or showing, but it's certainly effective. Anyway, simple tool, make that up. Let's pan back, we're going the wrong way. Right, clean up the file, both sides of course, and before we put it away, to reduce that pinning in future, take a piece of chalk and just run it down and up the file, both sides, like so, and then put that back in the rack. The chalk will reduce the pinning next time you use the file. I believe I said that the file card should be made of brass. I meant to say copper. I did use the word copper afterwards, but slip of the tongue folks, I'm not editing it out. And I'm still trying to get this to show the teeth I've imparted. It's trying, the old focus is trying. I think you can see them. Anyway, very simple tool. A plumber will give you a piece of copper pipe. This is 1/2 inch hot water pipe. He'll give you 4 inches surely. Tell him you'll clean his files for him for nothing. Okay, a point I should have made very, very obvious, but which a lot of youngsters completely seem to miss, is that files cut in one direction only, and that's forward. Yet you see youngsters going away at great gusto, elbows going like fiddlers, and that won't do any good at all. So like hacksaws, files cut one direction only, so lift the file off the work on the backstroke. Okay, I'm going to deviate away just for a moment and tell you a sad story. A little enterprise I had at one time. We was making various craft goods, and I needed some additional items made, and although the staff were working flat out, the demand was that I required some more. Well, I wasn't in a position of taking on additional staff, so I decided to outsource the work perhaps. I heard of a factory that had shut down about 30 miles away, and this factory had shut down for some reason or other, a big one, and I think they got a government grant or something, and they turned it into a college for students to teach them the art of metal crafts and so forth. And I thought I'd go and see if they could help me out. So I went along and saw the boss man, and he showed me around. And I took some samples of what I wanted made, and I said, you know, do you think your students could make these? Quite happy to provide the materials, jigs. Didn't want the job done for it, you know, for nothing. Quite happy to pay a rate. Oh no, said the bloke. Well, they couldn't do that. And I looked around and my heart absolutely sank. There was about 45 students all at benches, filing away, hacksawing away at bits of metal. Not one of them had a smile on their face. There was loads of facilities there I'd have given me eye teeth for, but they all looked completely miserable. The tutors, and I use that word advisedly, you could tell them they had brown coats on and they looked totally fed up. Anyway, it transpired that the guys in brown coats were ex-employees of the firm, just working out their last few years to get their pensions. They weren't teachers, they taught the kids absolutely nothing. And I came away from there, 30-mile journey, and I've never been so depressed. But there you go. Actually, I should have wised up, because prior to going into this college, I'll keep it short, there was a couple of skips outside, and I don't know if it's an affliction I've got or what, but I just can't help myself from sticking my head over the top and seeing what they've thrown away. And inside this skip I was horrified. There was several 8x4 sheets of steel plate ranging from 3/8 up to ½ an inch, and about the most 18 inches of one end of each of these sheets had a few holes cut in it, and by the looks of it they'd been cut in with a flame, oxyacetylene or something similar. So presumably they were teaching them to use oxyacetylene, but all they'd actually taught them to do was be wasteful. If I employed people like that, I would be sure at the end of the week to give them a little extra in their wage packet. I think in my day it was called the P45. In actual fact, the tutors, sorry for the language, had taught these students bugger all, only to be wasteful. But there you go. Okay then, well that's enough of that. Let's get back to files. As I said, it's quite a complicated subject, which would take several videos all on their own. But the use of files and the technique in using them, there's some very good books on. But a basic fault that the amateur tends to do is he rocks the file on the work instead of keeping a parallel motion. But more on that another time. So if you're starting out and you want some files, and perhaps you haven't got any, and you're thinking about buying some, well, don't go to the tool store, the DIY, the B&Qs of this world. Avoid all the Far East and gaily plastic covered Chinese rubbish. Go to an engineering firm and buy good ones. Get a selection of what you want. In English sizes they go from 4 inches to about 16, and they go in steps of 4, 5, 6, 8, 10, 14 and 16 like that. And that measurement, strangely enough, goes from the tip of the file to the end of the tag. I don't know why they do that, but they do. Another point with regarding looking after files is not to use them on virgin cast iron. A piece of cast work coming straight out of the moulding sand will have a skin on it, and the silicons and the various carbon particles within that skin will destroy the teeth of a file. Get through that skin with a grinding disc, and then you can happily tackle it with hand tools. There is a tendency nowadays in modern engineering practice to avoid hand working tools and their use of, as we rush headlong into faster and faster ways of producing goods. But there will always be a need for hand tools, to make one-off parts, even to make the machines themselves. So it's a skill worth looking into. But perhaps more of that next time.